How's it going, everyone? Today I am off Witch this time, as this kind of required a lot of notes that I needed to pay attention to and not really focus on the game. But this past week and a half from my last upload, or my last recording, if you will, I never really discussed my relationship with YouTube, honestly. I kind of dabbled in it, and I never really went past the I'm busy or I just got caught up with stuff stage. So with this, I kind of wanted to set a timeline of my entire career, if you want to call it that, from now. Apologize if you hear stuff in the background. From now to when I first started. Also, a little side note, this game, if you know what this game is, it's Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. I actually really love playing it. It's like a racing with cops and cars and racers and all this other. It's pretty. If you're interested, just look into it. I'm not really going to be discussing much about it, but it was one of my favorite games growing up. So let's gonna let's uh let's take it back to 2019, actually the year before COVID, where I and myself, obviously, and Ken Boy 1002, we he decided no, we decided to jump into doing YouTube. That was my first decision in going into YouTube. He had done some videos before then, but that was before we had met, I believe. So when it came to that, we started, I won't say we, but I started mainly in Minecraft. And that was, talking about our realm that we had at that time or our world that we always played on and any like community worlds that I did with some other friends. I actually had one world with my friends that around that time we were playing quite often. I had to go out of state on a trip to go help my sister. I have a sister, and I remembered I would always be playing around like 11 p.m. to 2 in the morning and then wake up the next day and take my nephew to school. It was freaking crazy, but it was fun. It was actually really fun. And around that time, Ken Boy and I started a realm, and that was one of our first realms ever. And I remember so clearly about it was kind of next to a village and right around the corner it was like in the desert, and right next to it I think was either a jungle or like some heavy set of trees, and a little further along the coastline on the left side was where we eventually call home. I made the jungle temple, which for us at that time was like crazy to find, especially for me. I made that one my home. And he wanted to make a tree house, so he ended up making tree houses and all this other stuff. It was cool. I think he still has it. I would actually love to showcase that maybe at some point on this channel, but we'll see. Um, but yeah, that was pretty much a good portion of that year. Later that year, I eventually took up working, and I had been working retail, and to be honest with you, retail was not fun. I took a little sidestep from YouTube and maybe even playing. I really don't remember much from this like weird time frame of when I first started working to when I ended. I'll get into that, but I remember playing every so often, but that was kind of my schedule was weird because with retail, if those who have worked retail, if you know, or if you don't, what ended up happening was, for example, I would be there at the store at 4 in the morning till whatever time I leave, and then I would have to open the next day. So this is 4 in the morning is one day, 8 a.m. Uh, opening is another day, and then the day after that I would close, and it was freaking chaotic. It was just so freaking chaotic. And around this time, I was still um, kind of making YouTube, kind of not. I was so on and off. And during this entire time, even back in 2019, I was still going to school. So I was still like working, going to school, and it was kind of just challenging and putting a lot of pressure on myself to really do a lot, right? I even worked through COVID later that year, or in the next year, if you will. And The moment COVID hit the world, I don't even know if I could technically say that now, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, but the moment that hit the entire world and everyone went on lockdown, it was chaotic for me. It was the most amount of hours I was working. And let me be honest with you, I had a part time title, but I was working almost full time hours. So consistently every week, I was getting between 35 to 38 hours a week. I was getting one day off almost. And it was hard, it was stressful, and I was still going to school at this time, like I previously mentioned, so it was just even more pressure and more like stress on me, and it was crazy. It was genuinely crazy, and I I believe, and I even remember at this time that I kind of wanted to put YouTube on the side because with my part-time or whatever job, school, I just had a bunch of pressure put on me to try to be like a very entertaining YouTuber, really good at editing and all this other stuff, and I put too much on my plate for what I had at the time and had unrealistic expectations for myself. And it was like that for the rest of 2020. Obviously, I had a bunch of personal things happen also in 2020, but that's neither here nor there. But I just remember it being so chaotic, and it was genuinely just so much. And it wasn't until the early months of 2021, eventually, I decided to leave. I remember it was back in like February, early February. I was still in school, but they weren't giving me less hours. I had asked for less hours, but they did it for like 1 or 2 weeks and then put me right back on a normal schedule. And eventually I just said, you know what, I'm done. I'm leaving. I put my 2 weeks in, and I was also starting to get delayed. And if I'm going to share with if I'm going to share something kind of personal with you guys, I was going to high school at that time. I wasn't getting my GED, it was an actual diploma. And it was through a program that I was in at that time that allowed me to get my diploma. And I was projected to be delayed again, I think by another year. So I got tired of honestly neglecting my schoolwork, which eventually that's kind of what I was doing. It was very, very bad. And I just decided to go ahead, quit this job, and focus heavily into school. And I wanted to fix the priorities that I needed back as a priority in my life. And school was definitely up there. Obviously, my mental health, which was crazy at that time, and with the stresses from school, from work, and personal stuff in life, it just got so much to the point where I was just, all right, I'm going to focus now on the schoolwork at my school, and maybe I'll do some other things or some other job eventually, but right now let's focus on that. YouTube did kind of sneak its way in a little bit. I eventually did make my third and fourth videos around that time, and it was steering away from Minecraft and more into Roblox, and that's when I had introduced. Uh, I don't know if it was intensive mold, if he went by that, or if he went by little 3D or something. I'm forgetting his username off the top of my head, and I'm kind of lazy to look. But I started doing some Roblox content with my friends, which was kind of fun at that time before, you know, stuff hit the fan nowadays. And I still kind of had that feeling of wanting to do it, and I just kind of been putting it away and away because, again, my priorities were to get school done ASAP. And I will also share that I eventually did. I even got COVID at that time, too. So it was like the last month. I think it was uh, between March and May. I got done with like 5 classes uh, that was projected to take me like 6 months to a year, and that was also including a senior project that they had as a separate course. And I had got COVID at that time, and I got sick so bad. It was actually like I couldn't go outside, I couldn't do anything. but I still sat down here at this table that I'm at right now, and I freaking just got it done and over with. And it was awesome. It was the greatest feeling in the world, and I felt like I was on top. And as quickly as I got that schoolwork done, I got burnt out so freaking quick. So after my graduation and after the grad night and the stuff that they did for us who were graduating, I took a little break. I took about the rest of 2021 off into early 2022. Maybe even the late 2022. My memory is a little hazy when it comes to that. Um, I kind of self-reflected and I wanted to take time to focus on me and not really anything else. I think I started doing DoorDash at that time. If you know what that is, or if you don't, it's a delivery service kind of similar to Uber Eats. I think that's more common outside of the US and even in the US, obviously. But DoorDashing, as far as I can tell, is just in the US itself. Please prove me wrong if I'm wrong. But that entire year, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. If it was school, if it was trying to find a job, do something else. Obviously, DoorDash is technically a job, but it's not a great job for um, like anything else down the line. But at that time, it was pretty decent. It was making me decent enough money, and I got some pocket cash. I got obviously cash for gas and all this other stuff, but uh, I just wanted to focus on like what my next step was, and I still, and be honest with you, I still am thinking about that. Obviously, I'll get into it, but yes, I kind of made a decision eventually, but I'm still like, I can't. I feel like I'm not in the right spot. Now I'll come back to that. But for right now, I during 2022, I from 21 mid to late 21 to 22, that year, those 2 years, year and a half, if you will, I was kind of gaming a lot more, as well as focusing on myself. Uh, Being home was especially a big factor in that, staying home all day and everything. So I was gaming, but I really wasn't recording. At that time, YouTube wasn't really a thought in my mind. Uh, it was and it wasn't. Kind of like now, where I have an itch to do it, but I can't find myself doing it, if that makes sense. And that's purely a me problem. Absolutely a me problem. And it stayed that way, obviously, through 22. And when it became early 23, or even honestly the ending of 22, I decided I wanted to go back to school for basically the job that I have right now. Yes, I'm a full-time employee somewhere else, and a part-time student currently. Part-time, full-time, I don't know. I'm a time student right now, but I'll get into that. Hold your horses. But I decided to go back to school for basically the position that I'm in right now, or at least the title that I hold right now. That started in early January, and that was about a 6 month, half a year commitment. And within those first 6 months, it was kind of interesting. It sounded like it was a good topic. If you don't know what it is, it's called sterile processing. They're kind of like the backbone of the operating room. The doctors do the surgeries, there's people helping them in the surgeries, there's instruments used in the surgeries, and sterile processing basically just cleans those instruments after they're done with the surgeries. So that's kind of like the unsung heroes, if you will. So later that year, because again, it took about 6 months, so about halfway through the year to maybe three-quarters of it, I had to take a test. And this is for the certification. And to be completely honest with you, I know I was just talking so highly about the subject, or basically highly about it. Didn't really study that well. I got up to about section or chapter 10, I want to say off the top of my head, out of like 28 before I stopped taking notes. And that was my mistake. Obviously, I should have been taking more notes and focusing more on the paper than just being at the meetings. And hold on, let me talk about the school real quick. So the school is not a bad school, sort of. It's at like a community center. It's a program. It's a separate program, but it's like run at as like a community center, and it's mostly self-paced. So you have to do your own stuff with the book, write your own notes and everything like that. But the key information they want you to remember, or at least for the tests to remember when you do officially take it, they'll go over in the chapter itself and highlight it. So they themselves will like tell you what to highlight, and they'll talk about whatever they need to talk about afterwards. And um, that was it each week. We would go like through a somewhat small review over what the chapter was, and then they'll talk about the next chapter and then highlight and then bye, see you next week or whatever. Hold on, let me drink some water real quick. You can take this test two different ways. Or you can take it. You can take two paths, but they both lead to the same certification. So one way is you have to get clinical hours, and if you don't know what clinical hours are, it's well, frankly, I don't even know myself, but you have to get a certain number of hours in each subject. There's decontamination, sterilizing, prep and pack, and transport, and there's something else. They had to get there's certain hours divvied up between each of those topics, and they equal right now. At the time of recording this, I'm thinking about 400 hours. You can you can do that, get the 400 hours, take the test, pass, and then you become fully certified. Or you can take the test, pass, get a provisional, which is kind of like a shortened amount. You're technically certified, but you're not fully certified, and then get the hours submitted, and then you're fully certified. I went with the second half. I went to take the test first, and this was right before a really big trip. And before I even talk about the big trip, I went to go take this test. This was a test about 8 in the morning, and it was pretty far away. It was about like an hour and a half away. And I decided to do it 8 in the morning, and I had to leave my house at like 5 in the morning because it was really far. It was really far for no reason. They had it in the air at the time frame that I wanted it, and I was like, "Yep, I'm jumping all over that." And I got there. This was a pretty official like testing site. They they have you like they go over your like what's on you. You put your belongings away in a locker. You lock it. You have the key with you. They assess you. They talk to you about your like test, and then they let you go in the testing room. And there's a bunch of other people there, but they're not taking the same test. This is kind of like a trade school, if you will. That whole program or that job itself. So there's other people taking different tests. So you're not like the only one there. It's literally other people there taking different types of tests. So if you try to cheat, it's going to be kind of pointless. So it's basically an anti-cheat thing. But yeah, I submitted my test, went through the whole thing. I was kind of freaking out a little bit, but it was kind of easy, actually, now that I was looking back on it. And they said that I would get an email. Oh, they said that I would get my results as soon as I submit it. And when I submitted it, on the screen, on the computer I was on, it didn't say anything. It just said, like, hey, you submitted, whatever. And I didn't look until I got to the elevator and I was walking right out of that building. I looked at my emails and it said you passed, and I was freaking out because I was like, "Oh my god, I passed my test. This is so cool, right? This is so awesome." And then I didn't think about it at the time, but I only have about like 3 to 6 months because you can ask for an extension, by the way. You can get it extended a little bit longer. I had a 2-week trip coming up. I was so happy that I passed, but I had a 2-week trip coming up. And that trip was out of the country, so I won't be able to do anything for the next 14 days. So I'm like, shoot, dude. I'm excited for that trip. It's a fun trip. I went to Portugal. It was awesome. It was just awesome. And I got home after this trip and I was like, okay, I gotta lock in. I gotta contact my school to help me get like my hours because I need to get my hours ASAP. And I was just stressed out like a mofo. It was crazy, man. And it wasn't until like later that year or early 24, I went ahead and I was applying everywhere because again, I could technically apply, although it's a provisional. They might take a look at me and want me, but yeah, I was applying everywhere. Uh, you can do what they call an externship, which means you can go to a either a clinic or whatever, a hospital. They'll take you for free and use your labor again for free. And um, worst case scenario, I went ahead and my school requested if they could hook me up with an externship, and afterwards, just kind of go whatever. But I kind of wanted to take matters into my own hands, so I started applying to jobs. And it wasn't until I want to say, honestly, I think it was either late 23. I kind of misremembering these dates. I apologize. Or if it was 24. But I remember I started working in. Well, no, I remember I started working in 23. So November 23. I was on my way to an event with my parents and whatever. We were going to go do something. And I had it recently applied to a hospital that was kind of near the testing site, actually, so it was about an hour away. Keep that in mind. And I applied there, interviewed, went through the whole process. They eventually didn't pick me, unfortunately. But November or even maybe last like August, October, whatever, uh, I had gotten a text from that manager randomly and asked if I was still interested in the position. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. They straight up hired me, even though I had my provisional and I applied hours away, even like 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away. Nobody really wanted me. And I was so happy to hear that. And kind of like a little side note, literally around the time within that like onboarding stage, which is about a week to 2 weeks, depending on how long your onboarding takes for this, I had gotten a call from the school about my externship, and the guy, reached out to me and talked to me, and I was like, "Hey, so you can start this day, and that day, and we'll have call us and let us know when you're here, so we can get you set up with a locker." And I said, "Thank you, but no, thank you." I had gotten hired elsewhere, so I appreciate the phone call and taking time out of your day, etc., etc. And I got his information, so thankfully I could, not technically, I could reach out eventually if I wanted to and talk to him about it. So late 2023, I start working at this hospital, and they were willing to take me on, willing to train me and everything. Again, the only downside to this was that it was really far. Again, it was an hour. I want to say it was about an hour and a half away. To put it in perspective, it was 50 miles from my house that I'm recording in right now. Oh, I'm recording in a house, not a studio. Um, sorry. Um, it was pretty freaking far away, and they wanted to train me because I was only technically book smart or only know the books and then never really worked in the field itself. So this was my first experience, and they were willing to train me and help me get my full certification. They wanted to train me in the morning, which is about from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. So that means I left my house to go there, 50 miles one way, by the way. I think I failed to mention that. It's 50 miles one way. Uh, from here, I left around no later than 5:20 in the morning. Otherwise, I'd be late, like really late. And I'd go up through this windy path in the mountains. It was freaking crazy. And by the time I got out of work from there, I'd be getting home closer to 5:30, 5:45, almost 6 o'clock sometimes. So it was a really, really long drive. When it came to um, the people there, they were really nice. They were really awesome people. I really liked the people I was working with. The morning people. They were very nice. They were very cool. They talked to me. They, helped me through everything. They showed me how to do everything. And I met some really, really cool people. The thing is, I wasn't hired, though, for that shift. I was hired for the second shift. As much as they were awesome people and, as much as I would love to work with them, I was hired for that second shift. And that second shift is from 3 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. And it was rough. We'll get into that in just a moment. The morning people were awesome. They obviously trained me, they showed me the ropes, and they basically got me as ready as they could possibly do, I guess, for the second shift. Because there was only a supervisor for the morning, and there wasn't one ready for the second shift at that time. There were more experienced techs, but they were not. There were no lead or uh, supervisors at that time, or even lead techs, if you want to call them that. And um, eventually, I did make that swap, and their most experienced tech there, they had left from the second shift eventually, like a month to 3 or 4 months after I got on to the morning shift, which was a bummer because she was really cool and I wanted to learn under her, but it was just it was crazy. And um, when I did make that shift to the second shift, funny, I was leaving my house around, I want to say 1:15 to 1:30 in the afternoon. The earliest is 1:15, the latest was 1:30, and I would not get there until about like 2:30, 2:45, and vice versa. By the time I got out of work around 11:30, I would not get home till about 1:30, 1:45 a.m. And unfortunately, that same windy path road through the mountains they were working on at night, so I had to go the long way, and even then sometimes the long way had closures, so I wouldn't I think the latest I got home was like 2:10, 2:30 in the morning, between that time frame. And it was rough because this is also a Monday through Friday job. I failed to mention that in the very beginning of before rambling on about the shifts, but this was Monday through Friday. This was my day to day, day in, day out for Monday through Friday, and the weekends I was off. And it was great until it wasn't. Because then there was also some nights where I didn't really fall asleep right away, so I wouldn't go to bed until like, what, 3:30 in the morning, 4 a.m. the latest? It was bad sometimes. It was really bad. But I made it work. I made it work. And again, it was, again, great until it wasn't. Eventually, there were some other new hires, and they eventually came on to the second shift, and we even got a supervisor, which was awesome. So we had some more experience and someone we can look to for answers if we needed it. And that's when kind of some problems happened. I was kind of declining mentally, and I'll genuinely share that. It sucked because of that weird shift, but my only time I was out in the sun or really doing anything, it was during the day when I had left. And kind of what sucked along with it is I never really got to see my family that much. I do live with my parents. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that. I do still live with them. And with me leaving at 1:30 in the afternoon and then coming home as late as I was, I never really got to see them, which is, I guess, okay. But, it really sucked because I never got to see them until the weekends. And, you know, I was exhausted and I was just ready to get some more sleep. But you know, at least I did my best. My mom, she kind of works long shifts, but she doesn't have to work as many shifts, if that makes sense. And um, while that was going on, I kind of had some issues with some coworkers, and I don't know if it was a me thing, so I'm not gonna say anything necessarily wrong about them, or I'm not gonna really even name drop anything. But from my perspective of things, it seemed like there was some issues that they had with me, and it was a bummer because they were really cool. I remember them saying when they came from their job, um, that people were talking smack on them and all this other stuff, and I was like, "What? You seem so cool. Why would they say that?" I don't. I doubt you're going to be watching this, especially this far in. But to the person who had problems with me, I'm sorry if I did anything wrong to you. But it is what it is. I put it behind me, and what's funny is I also heard you had some problems when you left, because I heard you recently left. So I'm sorry for your choices, and I am not sorry for thinking the way I think when you try to come after my job, and I'll get back into that in just a second. Let me take a drink of water. It was them and another coworker. There were some other coworkers that had different shifts. I won't get into too much detail about that, but that other coworker would come in Monday through Wednesday, I believe, and they would connive together and they would snicker on other things. And that other coworker really made it really stressful those days, early in the early weeks or the early week. Okay, I'm sorry about that. My headset died, so I had to cut that. Um, yeah, so she basically came like early in the week. And to be completely honest with you, I wouldn't say I felt like a living hell, but it made things really complicated. It really made everything really tense during those 3 days. And, I did get along well with them in the beginning. But once that experienced coworker went to the morning shift, it just felt so weird. I would, something just happened, and eventually I just stopped outright talking to them, other than just saying hello and goodbye at the end of my shift, beginning and end of my shift. And the coworker that I had a problem with, or had a problem with me, one or the other, they would always talk to each other, and then eventually I felt like it was targeted onto me. Uh, I remember, for example, them saying, uh, "Who does a tray like this?" or something along the lines when it came to cleaning a particular tray at my job. And I guess they didn't like the way I did it, but they said it really loud and just around the corner. And um, it was very weird. It was a very hard time for me. Obviously, with some stuff going on, I had no time for anything, honestly, except for just on weekends, and even then, I still had no time to myself. Um, it just got so much, and it put me in like a really bad place. And then on top of that, this is more of a side note. Even my own supervisor, in an unofficial sit down, he talked to me, asked me some questions, and he outright told me to watch my back and like to be careful because these people are watching me. And I'm like, what the heck? What's going on here? So once I got to around the time of my 1 year, with everything else kind of piling up, I started looking for jobs closer to home. At that time, I had already gotten my full certification. So my hours were done. I'm just staying for the money to get some pocket cash. I got what I needed out of the way at this place. Hold that thought. Let me get a drink of water. I had already gotten a few interviews and at other places, but they eventually didn't choose or followed up with me. So unfortunately, I didn't really get some great options there. And uh, it got to the point and it boiled over, and eventually, literally 2 weeks before, or 2.5 weeks before my 1 year, I just decided to put in my 2 weeks. And it felt so liberating. I had it set up to be a scheduled email, and I set it while I was on the way to work. And that entire time I was thinking about it, and I'm gonna be so honest with you guys, I had a smile on my face because I was ready to get the hell out of there. It was bad. It was so toxic, and I felt so freaking alone. And that was my first time dealing with a toxic coworker and my second or third job. So I was like, okay, obviously I need to do better next time, but right now I need to get the heck out of here. And about that first week of that 2 week process, um, two things happened. One, the major thing. Uh, One of the places I had interviewed at reached out to me because it was kind of an interview in an interview. I interviewed for one section, the sterile processing in a hospital, and then they referred my application to a different department, but still had sterile processing in it. And I had interviewed with both of them. And the second one, the one that they referred to, the first one referred to, they reached out to me and gave me a job offer. And I was like, yes, I was on top of that, and I was just so freaking excited. Took it, and I worked out some break in between, and some other time off before I started as well. And so I got a little break in between jobs. So it was awesome. Um, the second thing that happened in that first week, eventually I have come to learn, and I don't hate this person. Again, the coworker, old coworker of mine. But they had said to the morning supervisor that they had caught me, they had heard me and someone else talk about how I'm going to, one, get drunk and call off of work. And I don't remember the second thing, but that was the main part, was that I was going to call off of work on one Friday or whatever that Friday. And I wasn't told this until like late the second week or early that same week. I don't remember. But I was livid because you don't go after someone's reputation like that. You don't go after someone's job like that. Alright, I was already on the way out, but every day I showed up, I didn't call out. I stayed there and I worked my butt off until the last day. And the last day I asked if I can go home early because obviously it was my last day. And my boss, my supervisor said, "Yeah, you can go ahead and go. I'd appreciate the help. Just give me your badge." And I really love that supervisor. He was really awesome. I do still have his number, so unironically I might be reaching out here pretty soon. It's been such a long time. It's been on my head a lot lately. But one thing of note, my start date at that second job, which is now my current job, I was thinking, no, it was. It's the same day as my hire date for the last job. So literally my 1 year is also, before my 1 year at the first job was also my start date at the next job, which is fun. It was just so freaking funny. And I didn't really talk too much about YouTube during this time period. Kind of a little bit. But YouTube didn't really play a great factor into this. I had an opportunity to really record while in the early mornings, but I decided to mainly play and focus with friends, the ones who were willing to play with me so late or that were up at that time. YouTube, during that time, that year and a half or that 2 year process before even coming up to now, it really never played that big of a role, as I put too much effort into trying to be perfect, and in turn that pressure kind of steered me away from YouTube. I could have genuinely made this second channel a long time ago, and it sucks that I didn't, because I kind of get an opportunity just do whatever. I don't have the freedom to do whatever as I do with the main channel. The thing is, I never did it. I never really sat down and did it. And that's the one thing I really regret. But I'm doing it now. And moving forward, obviously, I'm busier. I genuinely have a reason as to why I can't do YouTube as much. So I've been at this new job for now a little over a year. I work reasonable hours. I'm 8 a.m. to or 8:30 a.m. to 5, which I can be a functioning human being. It's crazy. And I can finally do the things that I can do at home, like record videos or play video games or just study for school. But my biggest thing is I can see my family during the day, which thank God. And with this new schedule, I can finally do things like school. I wanted to do school while I was at the last job. I never really mentioned that, but it was just too hectic of a schedule where I couldn't really do much. I literally woke up, got ready for work. No, woke up, ate food, got ready for work, left. Got home really late and do the same thing Monday through Friday. And now I could finally focus more on the YouTube side of things. I could do things like this for the second channel, and eventually I want to do some things for the main channel. Like I previously mentioned, and even other past videos now at this point, that I have to focus on the things I already said yes to. I have to catch up on that. I'm not going to put that big of a strain on me to do it, but I have a newfound understanding to just post whatever, and eventually people will like it. Eventually people will come. And I don't have to be like everyone else. I can just be me. And I think that's what I'm going to do moving forward for this channel, for the Horsemen, and for my main channel. And with that said, if you stuck around to this point, it's been a real big blast kind of going through all this and actually recording this. It was a little weird in the beginning, I'm gonna be honest with you, but eventually I found my rhythm and just kind of rambled on. I didn't mention all of the cliff notes, but no, that was just my mind at that time. And then when I start speaking, obviously they're not gonna match up, but I hope it was entertaining enough. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll be recording and or streaming a new one pretty soon, and then eventually I'm gonna post something on the main channel. Thanks for hanging around. Remember to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.